What's up, witches? I'm Taylor.
And I'm Amber.
And this is Waking Up the Witch.
We're your neighborhood witches, and each week we get together and talk about all things witchy.
We're two curious ladies trying to understand the human experience, but while we do that, we think it's important to honor the people that lived here before us and honor the cultures and traditions that we're being inspired by.
This podcast is about waking up the witch, which means we are learning and growing every day. That being said, we're always open to feedback on how we can do better.
Now, let's go, ghouls. Hey, Amber.
Hey, Taylor.
How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
Good. I'm buzzing off of that interview.
I know. That was really wonderful.
Learned so much.
It's literally one of those things that we've been talking about wanting to bring on the show and talk about. I feel like there's so many deeper levels to the onion of hormonal cycling and all the things, and I'm just so grateful that
I'm a bit annoyed that that's not like a part of health class.
Yeah, there was a moment where I was about to start yelling about that, but
yeah, this dog.
He is so chewy.
Maybe when we were younger there wasn't this information, but there definitely is now, and it needs to be like treated as so.
Yeah, I feel like it's obviously like a bigger issue of just keeping women small and in the dark and like not knowing their power, and it's something that I have been connecting to the last probably 3-ish years now, where I've kind of decided to reclaim myself as a woman and the powers and energy that I hold as a woman. I was afraid of my womanness for so long, and I feel like a lot of, not all, I think there's some women who there's some women who surely are like, yeah, I am a goddess and I've always known that. But for me personally, and I think a lot of people in my generation, we just weren't ever given that knowledge and how to be empowered with our bodies and our cycles.
Well, it's another issue is like everything's based off like how men function. So it's like they have a monthly cycle, their hormone cycle like
Daily.
every 24 hours.
Yeah,
and so it's like not monthly, 24 hours. And so like, yeah, they wake up the next morning, new day.
Reset.
And so like, it's just, partially oppression, but also like a part of this masculine like hustle culture. Like our bodies really aren't made for that. And even we didn't get into like exercise and stuff like that, but if you are exercising the same way all month and like you're doing HIIT workouts when you're supposed to be like resting, you know, you're raising your cortisol and then you're like gaining weight instead of losing weight. And it's like we like beat ourselves up because we're like, oh my God, I'm not losing weight, or like I'm not getting strong, or like I can't push through and I'm on my period. And it's like you're not honoring your body and its systems, and it's just kind of bullshit.
Exactly.
So we could talk about that for like fucking hours.
There's so many, like I said, layers to this topic, and it will not be the last that we talk about this.
A lot of people are going to listen to this and be like, I had no fucking clue.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been gatekeeping on women's bodies for centuries.
We didn't even tap into like, we were going to talk about birth control, but we didn't even get there.
Well, she talks about the fertility method.
Correct. But
which
like
is a
most
form of birth
people
control.
are on birth control, so they don't cycle. And I'm interested to know like what cycles your body still goes through when you're on birth control, and like how to work with that too. And
we'll talk about
so
that
many
too.
things I'm curious about.
I feel like this is a topic I'm very passionate about, and like something that I am being called to work more deeply with myself personally. And I know there's so many people out there that we can talk to deeper about this, including Sammy herself. I know there's more that we can tap into with her, so it's gonna be incredible to see how much we can learn and how much we get to integrate and what
Yeah.
we choose to integrate and help our bodies as, you know, cycling
Yeah.
people in the world. I'm
For
just
the
excited.
last 6 months, so like I was doing good for a minute, but as a part of my morning ritual of journaling, I would write down like how am I feeling that day, like according to with
Mm.
whatever hormones, and
Mm-hmm.
then like if I was bleeding, how much blood, or like how long it
It's a good
lasted or
idea.
anything like that. So just like journaling, incorporating that into your like morning ritual of journaling if you do journal in the morning, or if not, like maybe at the end of the day. I
Mm-hmm.
think both are really important because then you can recognize how you felt all day long
Mm-hmm.
in that phase of whatever. But just it's just another tool to like get to know your body.
Yeah, and we all are very unique individuals, and you know, there is quote unquote a healthy cycle
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of us are striving, but so
Most people
many of
don't
us
have a
don't
healthy
have.
cycle. I
Exactly.
didn't for,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most of my life. I would say I don't even know if it's like it's not perfect now by any
Mm-hmm.
means.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not totally aware. Like I think I know when I'm ovulating, but like I haven't tested my temperature or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So who fucking knows?
Well, now you have some new tools that Sammy gave you
I want
that
to
you
get that
can.
ring,
Oh yeah, what is it called again?
the
Aura
aura
ring.
ring. Have you heard
Yeah.
of that?
Yeah, Rebecca actually was talking about it when I was visiting her, because it's just another way to like track your body, like
Yeah.
not just your cycles and the temperature and stuff, but like all of your different what are they called?
I don't
You
know.
don't have it. I was hoping you'd have it. Just the different rhythms of your body,
Okay.
your heart rate,
Yeah.
your temperature, like all your vital signs. What is it? Uh, so it's just a really great little health tool, and it just
Yeah.
looks like a fucking ring.
Yep.
It's
And
great.
I think as far as like month by month goes, the more you wear it, the more accurate it becomes as well. So
Yeah, it
I've heard
gets in tune,
good
and
things about it.
she was saying that it has like a pretty good battery life too. Because
Cool.
I was talking about my Apple Watch and how it can track some of the things. She was talking about using it for sleep and like making sure that my like I don't know, the oxygen level,
Mm-hmm.
trying to like see if I would be a good candidate for like a sleep study sort of thing. So she was talking about that, and I was like, yeah, I have my Apple Watch, and she's like, yeah, that works great too. Just like pay attention to this. But she was talking about her ring, like the battery lasts for
Cool.
so fucking long. So it's a really great alternative.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I totally,
not
yeah.
sponsored.
No, not yet.
Yeah, but that was a really lovely interview, and just like
Mm-hmm.
hearing about her story, I just really, really love her energy. She's so gentle. She's also a doula and
Mm-hmm.
just full of knowledge,
She's
and
been to so many fucking births.
that's so
I'm like
amazing.
jealous. I just want to see somebody give birth so bad.
We'll become a doula.
I don't want to do that. I just want to watch.
There's a lot of videos online.
Mm, I think Jess Funk already sent me her video. She's like, "Oh, you want to see a birth? Here
Yeah.
you go." I was
Yeah.
like, okay. There's like 15 people in the room when she gave
Oh
birth. Like her
God,
whole family was in there.
no. I would not be okay with
Yeah,
that.
she loved it.
Way to go for you,
Yeah,
Jess. I
community.
could not do that. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyways,
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did, and
yeah.
let us know.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another wonderful episode of Waking Up the Witch. Let's all just take a moment to get grounded and connect our energy together. If you feel like you're in a safe place to do so, go ahead and close your eyes. Sit in your body. Just notice any subtle emotions you're feeling today, any subtle feelings in your body. Just acknowledge them. Notice that they're there. Give thanks for being able to feel all the things. And let's take a couple cleansing breaths together, breathing in And release. And breathe in once again. And release. And on this last inhale, breathe in all the love from the universe and the earth that supports you. And release any tension, stress, worries that you may be carrying with you today. I'd like to call in our guides to be here with us today. Any angels or ancestors that wish to join us. Thank you for carrying us, supporting us, and showing us the way to our higher self, to our higher purpose. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, today we have my friend Sammy, and I am so excited for her to be here. Hi, Sammy.
Hi, Sammy.
Hi.
How are you?
Doing really good. The sun is finally shining and
Hell yeah.
it's feeling good.
Will
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of why you're here and what you're interested in?
Sure. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. So my full name is Samantha Wilkins. I am originally from upstate New York, and I currently live in a really small town in Southern Oregon. Um, I live here with my partner and our dogs. We have a really sweet little community, and just living in a rural place has been really nourishing. And I really am a person who loves like a slower pace and being outside of the system and at large, for quite a while now. I I feel like I'm a pretty multi-passionate person. So I guess it's just been a journey, like finding, just having any pressure to have like my one thing has never really been, it's never really worked out.
Totally resonate with that.
Yeah, I've just always been like in a kind of spiraling process, and I like deep dive into things when I get interested in them and kind of go like, as deep as I will or as I can, for a length of time. And then there'll be like like a connection point into another realm, and I'll explore there. And I've kind of, been on a journey like that since I would say like in my early 20s or probably before, but so what I am mainly focused in is just in the world of women's health, and female physiology has always been just super fascinating to me, especially in the continuum of like preconception and pregnancy and birth and postpartum, and the world of hormones, menstrual cycles, and just general, like overall wellness living in a female body, because obviously I live in a female body, and like just being a sensitive person and like having gone through a lot of things that had like affected my body and my sense of well-being in my body. It's been, I feel like, a really big, it's just been really important on my journey, is to learn how to find harmony with myself and all of these layers. And and I feel like I can be really super intellectual and really nerdy and love all of the science stuff, and I love the physiology, and I love like understanding all these like things that maybe not it's like
Yeah, same.
You know, it could be kind of hard to grasp, but I just like love that, like really understanding how things function and like how systems interact with each other. And, you know, and that goes all the way to like just the most simple things, like how we work with like elements and the earth and our water to, yeah, to like bring ourselves back into like a sense of wholeness and resonance. So I'm a big sister. My mom was pretty young when she had me. I think she was like 23 at the time. And my little brother was born 3 years later. And so, like, from the time I can remember, I was like, you know, just in relationship with, in like a caretaking role, I would say. I think it's like, you know, I like obviously experienced being taken care of too, but I think just from an early age, having like a baby, you know, around me that I loved and cared for. And I think just the reality with parenting, you know, like my mom just being pretty overwhelmed and spread thin. And my dad actually struggled with alcoholism my whole life.
Oh.
So,
were they together like when you were young, or?
They were until I was about 3 or 4. And then they separated. And so I think that was a really.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Western New York, kind of a super small, like really rural place. Like most people have never heard of it. I think just growing up with a single mom and having like a younger sibling was pretty profound, and like how I developed and oriented in the world, you know.
Totally.
We're the same.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, the oldest child thing. Is real. It's been like such a gift and such a blessing. And also like there's still moments when I'm like if I had just had that imprint, you know, of like
Yeah.
yeah, just like being
somebody
able to
kind of
feel
knew what they were doing at some point.
right.
You're like,
Yeah. And just
you're
like
the test dummy.
Gain a lot of life skills at a very young age.
yeah. Right. And so I feel like that's just a huge part of my like work now. I'm still even just unpacking and trying to unravel, like, you know, and understanding the spectrum of life giving too. Like if I do want to be a mother, so just like understanding how to work with those like deeper inner parts of my, you know, self. And but anyways, yeah. So because we did live in a pretty rural place and there wasn't a whole lot going on, and my mom worked a lot, and I spent a lot of time just me and my brother. Yeah, I definitely remember having like a lot of playtime outside and in the woods and playing with plants. And, you know, like me and my friend, my little girlfriend when I was younger, used to dress up in our like tap shoes and like run around and like make like black marks on the floor and be like, Dad, there was like a witch that came in here. And just like I like I loved like all just like the, you know,
That's a baby witch
around that. Yeah, it was always really fun. More about that, I think when I was in high school I got really into health stuff. Like that's when my mom started calling me like her health nut, you know, kid. Was just super into like eating good and like working out, and I didn't know anything about organic food and like yoga and things like that at the time, but just yeah, I was like oriented towards using natural things to like help myself out and feel good. And yeah, so much. I think too, just like I was thinking about this, like having, because I didn't live with my dad growing up, but just I had a really special relationship with him. And because he had just a lot of unresolved grief from like a lot of traumatic loss in his life. And he was in a lot of physical pain from like a lot of old injuries. And so I think just having a parent who was so like enmeshed in their pain, that was really like, I think it really formative for me, because I had to become very sensitive and intuitive to like read into all the energetics of what was happening, and like how I was always just like wanting to help and make things easier. And I feel like that's kind of how I came in, is like, you're here to help, you're here to help, like help take care of everybody. And my mom is a nurse now, and she's just, I think I got a lot of that from her too. She really, I just grew up with her, like going out of her way all the time to take care of people. And she's just a super, loving, compassionate caregiver person. And her mom was a nurse too. And so, yeah,
long line of healers.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
my mom
like
too.
very wounded healers too, But sorry, your mom.
Oh, my mom's a nurse too, and I feel the same way
Mine
about her.
too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
Here we are once again.
Just relatable
Same.
story.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that was like a really big imprint, is both of those, like having the the model of like, we're here to like help each other out and take care of people, and then also the like getting to experience early on being around somebody who was like really unable to be helped, and like always wanting to like help them feel better. I think just with the orientation towards being in service, that's kind of where like a lot of that came from.
I want to hear about, like, didn't you end up moving to Hawaii, and that like really made a big dent on you, and then how you got from Hawaii to here, and how that's been really important in your like spiritual path and all of that.
Yeah, so when I was a teenager, I had a lot of stuff come up, like just didn't really feel good for a long time. Kind of popped out of that, and like later on in high school, when I went through like my health nut phase or whatever, and then I went to college for a couple years in Buffalo with a partner that I had for many years back then. And when I was about 20, I started to go through this really big like identity shift, and just realizing that I wanted to travel, and I didn't want to be where I was from anymore. And I wanted to just go out and experience new things, just like explore and get out of my little small town and meet new people and all of that stuff. And I somehow found this exchange program through my college that I could go pretty much anywhere in the country, and just do like a semester of an exchange. And
amazing.
I had always, like my whole life, wanted to move to a tropical place, like being from New York and like experiencing long cold winters every year. I was like always dreaming about living on the beach, and I like loved listening to reggae, and I was like, I want to go live in the tropics. And Blue Crush was like my favorite movie. I watched it like a ton, and I was just like, I want to go like live in a shack on the beach and surf every day, like that whole thing.
Love that.
So yeah, I found out that I could do a semester abroad and go to Hawaii, and so I did that. And that was this huge juncture, because I just had been so kind of sheltered, and was really naive about like the rest of the world still at that time. And yeah, I moved to the Big Island, and I like never went back to Buffalo after that. Yeah, I just completely fell in love immediately. I had experienced like that feeling of just being comfortable and at home. And like that's.
Did you learn how to surf?
I did. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't like a crazy avid surfer, but I did. I liked to be in the water like every day for sure. Yeah, as much as possible. but yeah, being there really was so life-changing. Like I would say the first like 6 months I was just still I don't know, in my like hardened like New York like punk rock shell.
Mhm.
And then like something started to happen where yeah, I feel like just there was just so much that like melted away. And I experienced like a sense of community really and family, like, you know, chosen family for the first
Mm.
time. And just being in this place is so vitally, you know, it's just so vibrant and alive, and where there's so much, you know, culture that's still very much intact. And uh, definitely, I just learned so much. And it wasn't always easy, but just in terms of like, yeah, just understanding things about the world, you know, things that we weren't taught in school and stuff. Like just
Yeah.
Hawaii being a place that is occupied by the U.S. military, and like just really what had happened there. Yeah, it was really impactful, and still just being met with so much kindness from the people, and it just yeah, I
Mm.
just felt really super lucky to have kind of been brought into this um, very sacred place. Um, yeah, it's
Amazing.
still really like
And you were there for a year?
I actually lived there on and off for like 10 years.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, she never went back to Buffalo.
I never went back.
Love it.
No, no,
You like kind of found yourself. Like I'm sure there's like a huge rebranding of your identity and just getting to know yourself on a whole nother level.
right.
Yeah, do you feel like that's where kind of like your spiritual journey
Oh
started?
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Mm.
Yeah, it
What
was.
did that look like?
I just remember having moments of it. It was like always when I was near the ocean or in the water. I spent a lot of time alone too, and I didn't have a car for like several years, and I rode a bike, and so
Mm.
I was just on my bike and at the beach a lot, and I was in school too, but um, there's just so many magical, like amazing sacred places, and I would have these like full body, you know, like experiences of just being
Mm.
like in uh like just in divine connection with like myself
Mm.
and the land and the elements, and um yeah, it was just so many shedding layers, but a lot of like waking up. I feel like a lot of it was just through contact with the land and the energy there,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and yeah, being involved in some cultural practices and just around you know, like native people who are practicing their culture, um, and
Mhm.
who still hold so much reverence, and always have for their sacred places.
Mm.
it just
So
yeah,
special.
it created this whole awareness that I didn't have before. um, and so,
Mhm.
and then, you know, it's kind of, there's also like a big ecstatic dance culture, and just a lot of um, you know, just a lot
Mm-hmm.
of like free people having a good time. I got super into yoga, um, and just to, yeah, started really learning how to move energy through my body. Um,
Mm.
and
Love it.
yeah, so yeah, and I had like
How
a,
did you end up
sorry,
go on?
oh,
Yep.
just
Keep going.
I had a little group of friends that we started, you know, getting into like tarot and playing music together, and we would just always be out camping and exploring, and just yeah, just like opening up deeper layers, you know, experimenting with psychedelics more
Mm.
and just other plant medicines. I got really into food, you know, like the just the amount of like fresh, vibrant food that is local and everywhere, just really feeding my body the
Mm.
medicine that was growing on the land around me was really powerful. Um,
I love that.
And then how
That's
did
special.
you end up heading out this way?
I actually met a guy, got into a relationship, and he somehow convinced me to come to Oregon, which, like, looking back, I'm like, what the heck? Like, I can't believe I did that, but I was super,
I love those moments in life.
I was just like young and like, yeah, I want to just keep traveling. And I graduated from college at that point, and so I was wanting to just travel around more. And I, always I had friends from Oregon. Just always thought it sounded like a really cool place. And so, yeah, I met this guy from Oregon, and thought it would be like I would come and visit or something. And then I ended up, just the place in life that I was at the time was like, well, I'll just get rid of my room and pack up all my stuff and just go. And so, yeah, I found myself in Oregon. And that relationship obviously didn't work out, but I, um, Oregon has just been awesome with like the learning opportunities for me. At the time, I was getting really into plant medicine and herbalism, and I wanted to go to all of the gatherings and things like that. Just be in communities where we were learning about medicine ways together. It just felt like there was a lot more opportunity like that in Oregon. So I kind of went back and forth for many years, though. I would spend like spring, summer, and part of fall in Oregon, and then I'd go back to Hawaii for the winter and did that kind of seasonal thing for some time.
That sounds lovely. I know that you have like a pretty, like, your community of people is all very spiritual, and you guys do a lot of like gathering and ceremonies and stuff like that. Can you tell us what some of that looks like?
Um, yeah. Um,
Because I feel like that's super special, and like not a lot of people have that in their communities, and people are always like wishing and looking for that
mhm,
kind of support and like just the, like you said, family,
mhm.
really.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel super, super blessed to have found myself in places where there are a lot of resources and a lot of support, a lot of people coming together and wanting to gather, and a lot of different kind of traditions, um, and it's sensitive too, right? Because there are people here from native lineages that are still carrying their practices and traditions and sharing them with a lot of us. And
Mhm.
yeah, and so there is some of that. There are sweat lodges that happen regularly. That's been a really big part of my life for some time now. And
What's a sweat lodge?
so uh, yeah, a sweat lodge is, well, it is physically like a structure that's created out of willow. It looks like a dome, and it's covered with blankets. And there's a sacred fire that is tended. Usually there's a prayer and intention. Maybe the ceremony is for someone, um, with like something that they've asked for help with. And there are all these stones that are put into the fire and warmed up in the fire for quite a long time. Eventually, those stones are brought into the lodge once the people are in there, and then there's the person who is pouring the water, who's facilitating the ceremony, will bring the water in and pour the water on the stones. So you're in there with the door closed, you're totally in darkness, and it's really hot, and it's a prayer ceremony. So it is, essentially that. There's a lot to it, and it's a very, very old ceremony. And I feel really super, grateful to be welcomed into spaces like that, not having come from a lineage that, you know, holds those traditions. But I do live in a community where there are people who offer to do ceremonies like that for people like regularly. There's just a lot of access to that kind of help here, which is really, really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's
Amazing.
like it's my favorite way to pray. You know, it's like it's very cleansing. It's like it's kind of like, you know, you're going back into the womb of the mother, and everything that's involved is very, very old. You know, it's just elemental, and yeah, like I said, there's
How long do you split for?
it depends on who is leading the ceremony. Sometimes it can be like 2 hours. Sometimes they can be really long. Yeah, it just kind of depends on what's happening.
So
Yeah,
special.
it's super special. Yeah, I actually live.
It's something I've always been curious about.
I know, we
We've
would love to
talked about
join you
it.
sometime.
Yeah,
We have for
I
years,
know. Well, once
honestly.
it stops raining, you can come over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then what other so I kind of
oh, that's
interrupted
okay.
you when you were talking about like other ceremonies that you guys do. So I know you what else were you saying? I know you do plant medicine.
Yeah, occasionally there are things like this is such a kind of a hodgepodge place. There's sometimes like so many different things going on. I've personally kind of taken a step back from attending so many ceremonies. I've just been working on my like day-to-day life, you know, rhythms. But yeah, there's so much. Like sometimes we just get together and sing. Sometimes we will have a fire and just sit with the cedar, or, you know, some tobacco and just pray with the fire. You know, you can kind of make a ritual and a ceremony out of, feel like, however it wants to come together. I feel like that's the question for me usually, is like, how does this want to happen, and like what's appropriate at the time, depending on what's going on or what's our intention for coming together. Yeah, and
I love that.
I'm not in like a facilitation role. I just am humbly still just, you know, feeling grateful to be able to be around and learn. And yeah, but there are a lot of elders in the community that are still supporting the, you know, the ceremonies to keep happening even through the pandemic and everything.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that some of your like doula work and stuff, so like a birth, do you guys do that in like almost a ceremony type way? If you're doing it like a home birth, like do you have a lot of other women there bringing like the baby in? Like how does that look, I guess?
Are you okay? So you're asking like what it could look like in terms of holding space during a birth.
Yeah, like when you're doing like a home birth and you're the doula and you have like your midwives and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, so my belief around anything that's happening inside of us, you know, a female body in terms of pregnancy and birth and bleeding and, you know, postpartum, these like big life cycles that we go through in itself is a ceremony to, you know, so I feel like
Absolutely.
I learned, I started attending births before I got more involved in ceremonial practices. But to me, like they've always been like the same thing. Just the
That gives
energetics.
me chills.
It's hard to
I know, I was
describe.
getting full
But
body chill.
Full body nipple chills.
yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah. Same. Yeah. I just feel so humble. It's like just bowing to the altar of life in those places. It's really, really profound. Like just the magic and the potency and the like our own, like as a doula, I feel like my role is to be there to empathetically support, that person, that mother in her process, and also just really stay out of her way, because it's so much that there's just such deep wisdom, and like there's such a deep map. It's like the oldest map that we have, I feel like, in our bodies, is how to bleed and how to grow life and how to give birth, and yeah, so I feel like, the birth is the ceremony in itself, and as an attendant,
Absolutely.
I just show up as regulated as possible, with a lot of humility and just really listening. And as an intuitive person and as an empathetic person, you can kind of feel, what might be helpful or what might be needed. But a lot of it is just being present and listening and being available for contact and support, however that woman needs it at the time. And there's all the logistical things too, that could be happening. Heating up water, grabbing towels, and it's like helping with counter pressure and things like that. But to me, like, I do consider myself like it's such a spiritual process. That's part of why I've only to this point felt comfortable in home birth scenarios. Although I would like to be available to people birthing in the hospital too, because that type of space holding is no less needed, obviously, in those spaces.
Absolutely.
But 100%.
Yeah.
I think it's just as important. Like maybe whoever is at the hospital just doesn't have like a way to do it from home or doesn't know anything. And so like it's so important for you to be there and like help create that safe space and be like an advocate for them there when they like don't have anyone else.
Right. Yeah, it's just like truly with anything, like we need to feel safe and connected with other people, with other nervous systems when we're in a really vulnerable place. It's just how it is, so it's something that I just have always felt intuitively inclined to be available for, as like a part of my gift, although it's been really hard to like claim it and feel like, yeah, that's something is like, I do feel like I have that capacity to really walk with people through some of the most tender and transformative moments like of their life. And
absolutely.
And I've needed that. I've needed that too, so I know what it feels like to be held and tended to when you're going through something really big. And I have never given birth or carried a pregnancy full term, but I've had many dreams about it, and just being in those spaces has just helped me to really understand that way of being with people, you know what I mean? Like how, and that kind of goes into the realm of like nervous systems and co-regulation and all of that is kind of a different tangent, but
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
And then let's definitely go down that tangent. My first question, it just like hit me when you said like I've had a hard time claiming that. What do you think is holding you back from claiming that?
It's just can be really intimidating, and I don't know if like I feel like maybe everyone feels like this when they meet their, like, it's like something that they're carrying that is their contribution to humanity. Like,
well said. I think that's exactly right.
I think it's supposed to scare the shit out of you.
Yeah. Like it's a really big ask, and there's, as a sensitive person, there's all these things around like, how do I work with this energy, or how do I not take on what's not mine, or how do I keep my life like, like flowing really well while I'm going into these like deep places with with people, but I feel like that's part of who I am, is like I just do. It's not even that I like to, it just happens that I go into these really deep places with myself and with people, especially with women, and just, you know, been just really through my own healing experience trying to understand that technology, I guess, like of how we are made. Like there's all of these things on the healing path that come into play, like, you know, the generational things that we've brought in, the things that we've experienced in our lifetime. And it can be really dark and really scary. And so that's why we like need support, you know, and it can also just be a really hairy place to be in when there's like just working with those kind of energetics in a healing space. I've gotten myself into some situations that took a long time to integrate, you know. So yeah, it's just it's just really real. And so it does.
It sounds like
sometimes.
you're on the right path. Like just hearing you talk about it, you're just so gentle, and I can already feel that you hold such a beautiful, safe, sacred space for the person going through the birthing process. And yeah, I just get this intuitive hit that that's exactly what you are here to do. One of the many things, but right now, and to claim it, because you are powerful and capable, and you know, like you were put here for that task, and it has such a deep healing for yourself and what's to come for you, as well as you embark on the journey to motherhood. You know, when that happens, like, oh, this is all a part of your healing as well, to be there for others. And I could just feel such good, juicy, yummy. So when you said like, I have a hard time claiming that, like this light bulb went off. I was like, what? I mean, and you answered like so brilliantly too at the beginning of like, anyone, no matter what your path is or what you're here to do on the planet, we all do face that space of having that resistance, or that not having the courage to claim our space, you know. So it just, yeah, that hit home. It was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
What's your second question?
And then my second question, you were talking about too, about how it's all ceremony, like every part of our system as a woman, you know, living as a woman. And I'm curious to know, like, what are you, if you have any, what are your bleeding rituals? Because I think like me and my stage of life, I am somebody who, you know, menstruates regularly, and really am trying to tap into how to hold space sacredly, and to align my life with my cycle, and to be gentle in those moments when I am bleeding, when I just finished bleeding, and like this whole last week, you know, it's a resistance to surrender and allow yourself to rest because of the world we live in. You know, so I'm just curious if you have any rituals that you like to practice, you know, while on your bleed, and also in the other cycles of the, you know, what's it called? Your whole menstrual cycle, not just the bleeding cycle. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for naming that too. It's something that I, you know, and many others, I feel like maybe everyone who's cycling deals with, is like what you said, like that resistance to like surrender, you know, and just being with, like sometimes just doing less and doing nothing even is harder than, you know, doing something.
We sit with guilt the whole time.
Yeah. And me too. It's something I've been working with for a long time. And there's phases where I'm, you know, I feel like my self-care and like ritualizing my cycle is really great. And it works for me. It's like, you know, life altering and really life supportive. And there's times when I lose that too. And I feel like lately anyways, I've been just wanting to hold the awareness that the way that I meet my blood when it comes, or the way that I acknowledge that has like, okay, I'm in that phase now, that's here. That if I can just slow down and just take a moment to really be with my body in that moment and like welcome that energy shift, that it creates this like softening, that it's like, okay, like,
I love that.
and I have the privilege of having the space if I need to make it, at least the first 2 days. I feel like I have so much compassion for people who go to work in the world. Like I can't even imagine doing it.
Yeah.
Like being in a busy place.
Yeah.
I feel like I can get so overwhelmed and overstimulated.
Been there.
And so
yeah,
I really, just like asking my body like what she needs at that time. Usually it's like, I like to take baths and drink tea. But just for me, I feel like as I've gotten older, just taking the moments to tune in with my body and just a really simple way, acknowledging and listening to what's there and like what my body wants me to listen to, or like wants to do, like wants of me. That has just been, just for my mind and the way that it works, has been really helpful to just remember to just take a moment and keep checking in and create space. It's interesting for me now too, because I was single for a long time, but now I have a partner, and so just that whole journey of like working with how my energy shifts during that time and what I need, how to ask for what I need, how to make space. I think that it's something that, we'll have to work with to varying degrees, like throughout our lives as our circumstances change. And so, but I feel like however it is for anyone, wherever they're at, just creating a little bit of space to set an intention and just be, empathetically like attuned to yourself I feel like it's just so much about presencing. Like I feel like there's a real channel that opens up that can be, for me, it can be so psychedelic and like interdimensional. That if I can create some space to really just be and listen and drop in, there's so much there, and there's so much healing, there's so much understanding that happens. There's a lot of inspiration that comes through. There's a lot of letting go. There might be a lot of grief, so it's always a little bit different. But if for me anyways, just there can be so much in that's ready to be like felt or acknowledged or released. And if I don't just make like a little bit of time to, journal and meditate, maybe like sleep alone, eat really well, then I feel like the rest of my cycle kind of carries that imprint of like how I met my bleed when it first came.
Oh, I love that so much.
You should see Amber's face. Just grinning.
There is a little practice that
I have so many chills.
There is, because I know you asked about like practices or rituals. There's one that has been happening for me recently that I really love, that I might share.
Please. Yep. Yes.
It depends.
It's one of my goals this year is to connect more with my cycle and like hold space through each phase.
It's so
I'm
worth
open
it.
to all of it.
It's so good. It's so worth it. So I use a cup. Sometimes I don't use it as much, and I'll use like cloths, but either way, like I like to when I'm using a cup, will actually collect my blood in a jar and keep it in the fridge until I'm done bleeding. And then
you'll just like keep adding to it. Awesome.
This is just one of the things that's kind of come up as like a helpful practice, and sometimes I do it differently, but I like to keep that until I'm done with my cycle. And then I have a lot of mugwort growing where I live, and she's one of my favorite like top 5 for sure plant allies. And I'll bring my blood over to the mugwort and say a prayer and just kind of listen to like what came up during that time, or like maybe what something I was working with, or how I want to like move forward. Just anything, just like having a moment to connect and kind of integrate like what was there for me during my bleeding time. And then I'll like offer the blood, to the earth. So that's been really cool for me personally.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I'm also an advocate of just like going out and bleeding on the oak tree. Like,
I've always wanted to do that.
Things like that, just being really wild and primal with it is good for me too.
Love.
Cool.
Yeah.
So witchy.
So, Sammy, could you kind of tell us about like the 4 phases of your cycle and like the way that you maybe want to eat or work out or like treat your body during that time, and like what is happening during like with your hormones during those 4 cycles or 4 phases of your cycle?
For sure. Yeah. This is like my my jam right here. I do actually like occasionally I like to get groups of women together and talk about just this. It's my favorite. So so like you said, there are 4 distinct phases of each menstrual cycle, a healthy cycle anyways. So like a cycle will always like we consider the beginning of our cycle with the first day of blood. And so obviously that's the menstrual part of the cycle, menstrual phase. And I'll kind of talk about the hormones as we go through. So like at the beginning of the cycle, all of the estrogen and progesterone are the 2 main hormones that fluctuate throughout the cycle. And in the beginning, when bleeding is happening, it's actually that all of the hormones have dropped to lower levels, and allows that lining to shed and be released. So the next phase is known as the follicular phase, and so the follicular refers to a follicle, which is in the ovary. The ovaries are full of follicles, and that is where the egg is matured and made ripe, for ovulation. And so there's that aspect of the cycle is more dominant in estrogen. Like estrogen levels are rising, and that is triggered by follicle stimulating hormone, which is a pituitary hormone. And so the egg is being nourished and vitalized, and the follicle is being prepared to release, whichever egg is up for being released at that cycle.
So I have a question.
Okay.
What happens to like your energy levels and all these things whenever your estrogen spikes?
Yeah. So typically, energy as you are approaching ovulation could increase. Like the ovulatory time is like the kind of the highest energy time of the cycle, or it can be. And so yeah, I'm just thinking there's so much to do with estrogen, as like our bodies are so complex and there's so many different types of estrogens and how they like interact with our whole system. But I'm mostly referring to like what a healthy normal cycle would entail, because there's like all kinds of ways that, you know, things happen physiologically, or the cycle can present differently. But in a healthy normal cycle, yeah, so estrogen is increasing throughout the follicular phase. There might be more, you know, there's actually like scans that have shown that our brain changes throughout the different phases of our cycle too. So we might be more,
I believe it.
like, you know, verbal and communicative, and what might be more wanting to organize, and we might be feeling more inspired. There's more energy. It's like, but that energy of producing the egg, it's like the energy of our system is like preparing to, you know, give give itself to the world, you know.
I'm in my follicular phase right now.
That's a nice place to be.
Yeah, I'm feeling good.
Yeah, it can feel pretty good. I like, you know, I like being there too. Yeah. And so it's like once estrogen peaks, that's what triggers the egg to be released. And that's the moment that ovulation occurs. And so during the ovulatory time, you know, it might be like a couple of days.
Okay. How long does the follicular phase last?
Typically, like about a week. Like if your moon cycle lasts about like, you know, 4 or 5 days, 5, 6 days average or something, then, you know, up until ovulation, let's just say on an average, would happen around like day 14 or something. So like 2 weeks in.
Okay.
And like not everybody's body doesn't, you know, it for a long time people thought, I think, that everybody ovulated on day 14. That's not at all how it works. No. But let's just say, you know, around that time. And then so once ovulation happens, this is my favorite part of the whole thing, is that the follicle that released that egg becomes its own endocrine gland and starts producing progesterone.
Whoa.
Yeah. And and so progesterone is super, super important for the health of our female bodies. And it can be difficult to make enough progesterone in this day and age, because there's a lot of things that, you know, can affect that. Stress, you know, the way that our like bodies are able to eliminate estrogen. It's, you know, but progesterone.
And what does progesterone do for our bodies? Why is it so important?
Progesterone is like, it's more of that yin hormone, where estrogen is more of like the yang hormone. But progesterone actually has a lot to do with like our bone density too. And just feeling like having a sense of it, I just think of it as like a nourished. It's like having enough progesterone as being like a well-nourished woman, you know. And there's a lot of things that it is really important for, which maybe aren't on the top of my head right now. But
it's okay.
No, that's a good layout.
Yeah, like I know, you know, signs of progesterone deficiency or estrogen dominance, because they can, you know, can probably usually go both ways. But it's like a lot of fatigue, bloating, breakouts, breast tenderness, like, you know, like we need enough progesterone to be feeling like in the appropriate place. Like I feel like the gift of that next phase, the luteal phase, is like we can be a lot more internal and less like outward in the world. Like we might want to stay home more. We might need more alone time. We might just be more inward in general. It's not as much of this like go out in the world and like make shit happen energy. It's more like stay home and tend the fire and like listen. You know, so like being in a good place with our progesterone levels like makes it feel really good to do that versus like being, you know, feeling depleted or you know, having like a lot of premenstrual stuff comes from like having a lack of progesterone.
Is there like any like food or something that we could do to help regulate our progesterone naturally?
Yeah.
Or foods that are depleting it even?
I would say that it's more, I think the most important thing there, honestly, is fat soluble vitamins. And this gets, you know, people into a bind sometimes. This actually has a lot to do with my personal healing and why I now eat meat and eat a lot of animal fats and things, is that I actually, and part of the way that I got into all of this in the first place is that I was really I either wasn't ovulating for long periods of time, which is not a good thing, or I was maybe ovulating but having like really short luteal phases, which is like a lack of progesterone. I had all these other health things going on. I had a miscarriage during that time. And so I started to learn more, you know, and I focused more on the foods aspect, which really meant having to incorporate animal foods into my diet again. Wow. After like a really long time of not eating. I was basically vegan and just very restricted on a lot of levels. Yeah. So,
I'm on week 3 of eating meat again.
Oh, wow. Nice. How does that feel?
Really good.
Yeah.
My body feels denser, which is like interesting. Just like more muscly without like doing a whole lot.
Yeah.
Different.
Right. I remember like having this feeling of like, oh, I'm satiated, because I used to feel like I could
and I'm like,
eat and then be like, oh, I still feel like I'm, you know,
I said that to Curtis yesterday. I was like, I just feel like I don't have to eat as much or as often because I feel like full.
Yeah.
Well, not even full. I feel like full longer. Like I'm just not like starving all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so important. So like the way
feels good.
I'm glad. I'm happy for you. It's like it's a big hurdle sometimes, but I'm always like hands down 100% if you have like hormonal imbalances or menstrual cycle like irregularities, like are you eating like nourishing foods? And it can, you know, it could just be such an edgy thing to talk about with people, but physiologically we do require like cholesterol to make our hormones, and there aren't many plant foods that contain cholesterol. And the other thing is that there's a precursor to progesterone that if we have a lot of cortisol, if our you know lives are just feeling really stressful, or even if we just have physiological stress going on and we're not like emotionally stressed or taxed, like our bodies will prioritize making adrenaline and cortisol over making progesterone.
I just think that's exactly what's happening in my body. And like what I've been trying to figure out for a while. So thank you.
Amazing.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's so important. It's you know, and I feel like it's so it's hard that we're not like educated on these things when we're younger, you know.
Seriously. I literally think just knowing that there are 4 phases to your cycle and that you feel different throughout them should be common fucking knowledge. Yeah. And the fact that I am 31 years old and just figured this out like last year is not okay.
It's not okay at all. I know. And then we only ovulate like we're only fertile for like 2 days out of the month. Yeah. Like what the heck?
Yeah.
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 And like,
And everybody's like, oh, don't you get pregnant all the time. And it's like,
and
It's
then
no.
birth
we could get
control.
on
I
a real
know.
heated conversation
I
about
do
this.
want to talk about birth control after we get on like past this
Totally.
last phase.
Yeah.
Okay. So your luteal phase, that's kind of like where you're preparing for your bleed, right? You're like kind of like slowing down.
Yeah, you're slowing down. Your uterine lining has gotten really like, you know, full and juicy, and like since there's no that follicle stops producing progesterone at a certain point because your body realizes there's no like implantation, you know, there's no fertilized egg in that case where you haven't conceived. And then so the, you know, all of those hormones will drop and the lining will shed, and then you're in your menstrual phase again. And I mentioned I was going to talk about fertility awareness, but I feel like where that practice really changed my life and my understanding of the cycle is to like your body increases in temperature when you're producing progesterone. So, and I'm sure, you know, there's like a lot of people are aware of that.
How do you test for that?
You take your temperature first thing in the morning. It's called your basal body temperature. So you'd like, you need a, you know, it's not a super special thermometer, but it's a BBT thermometer because it reads more than, it wouldn't just say like 98.6. It would say like 98.64 or something. Like it needs to be more fine tuned.
Would you say that you should like take your temperature throughout the month, like around that, so you know what's normal, and then so that when you do get to your ovulation, you can tell if it's changed?
Yeah, so that's part of the method with the fertility awareness method, is that you're tracking your basal body temperature and a number of other vital signs like throughout your cycle, and you'll create like a chart, you know, so you can see when after you've ovulated, you can confirm that you've definitely ovulated because your temperature will have gone up and stayed up, you know. And there's a lot of technical things about the method. It's like a whole deep dive, but this is how I learned, you know, that I wasn't producing enough progesterone, is that I started tracking my cycle and I was like, oh, my luteal phase, I only have high temperatures for 8 days when I should have them for like 14, you know.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, no wonder I couldn't carry that pregnancy, or no wonder I'm having menstrual issues. And so that, you know, you asked about the foods, and so that's kind of like where it went, is that like there are certain foods that are, you know, where our physiological design needs deeply nourishing foods, a lot of cholesterol, like fat soluble vitamins, minerals, you know.
How long do you think it kind of takes your body to readjust once you do introduce like the meats and stuff like that?
It kind of, I mean, it just depends on the person and what else is going on in their life, because it's like, you know, do they sleep regularly? What kind of light are you exposed to throughout the day? Like how much, you know, how regularly is your blood sugar like balanced? Are you in toxic relationships? You have a lot of unresolved trauma. There's like all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
But for me, like the foundational thing for everything for me anyways is like, how am I feeding? Can my body feel safe and nourished because I am providing it with those essential things that it needs? You know, am I eating regularly, and am I eating enough? Am I eating the right things? And so that's kind of like a whole other spiral into like metabolic health and nutrition, which I'm also super into. But it's always been like learning about, you know, the cycle and like what my body needs around the cycle, because we're just like always flowing and changing as women. So Yeah, but just
So yeah, what is
starting
that?
with the phases and like the energetics is huge, because it's learning to align with and like respect like the wisdom of your body in each one of those phases, as opposed to like, pushing back against it and trying to fit it into some other model that it's not going to work.
What were you gonna ask?
I was gonna say, what does it look like in your daily life with each cycle? Like, what things are you incorporating that you've learned to help you find balance again?
I think in general, it's important for me and where I'm at to eat breakfast, which is kind of a new thing. Like I didn't eat breakfast like most of my forever. So, um, eating a good breakfast that contains protein and carbs, and eating within an hour of waking up. This has been like,
Why is that important?
because we're fasting all night. And if you are someone who, like me, have just like had a lot of physiological stress in my body, like, it's actually more stressful for me to go long periods without eating than it is beneficial. So,
Interesting.
yeah, like waking up and just getting it's like making it so that your blood sugar is stable first thing in the morning and you're not running on cortisol to like power your day. So that's something. I like to eat breakfast pretty soon. I like to go for a walk and get natural sunlight in my eyes as soon as possible, because that's important for like your hormonal system and like the cascade of hormones to flow for your body to make energy. I eat a lot of the same things, but I'm pretty intuitive about like changing it up. But generally, what I eat always has protein and carbs. And I try to eat every like 3 to 4 hours just to. I've just been really tracking blood sugar regulation for a while because it has a lot to do with physiological stress.
How do you do that?
At this point, I can really like sense when I'm starting to go into a place where I need to eat even before I can really feel it. I can kind of just feel it in my like awareness. I might just get a little bit less like, I might feel a little spacey, might feel a little like anxious or something, or just start to have that inclination like, oh, it's been some time, I need to like eat. Yeah, I mean, that for me, just like it's just continuing to like learn how to be embodied has had a lot to do with just like, yeah, feeding myself good quality food. There are things like that I'm definitely not an expert about. I'm just like really fascinated in minerals lately as well. And so I like to have like put sea salt in my water. Yeah, and what else?
What does that do?
Just it's we actually like need a lot of sodium, and it's mineralizing. Sea salt often has like a lot of other minerals in it too, so you could do like trace mineral drops or something like that, but it just feels simple and nourishing for me to have like some sea salt in my water, and I hardly just drink plain water anymore.
Good to know.
Yeah. And then, yeah, just like eating enough, eating often enough, eating foods that I really like too. I kind of have to like really enjoy it, like I like the pleasurable experience of like making food and things that I've implemented that I feel like have been really helpful, supplement wise, is beef liver. And,
yeah, I've heard that.
Yep, beef liver.
Like,
And
do you eat beef liver, or is there like a supplement that you take?
it's still like really hard for me to actually eat it.
Yeah.
So I've been taking the desiccated capsules. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
The capsules I feel like are easy. They're still, I mean, I feel like it's probably the best to just like eat the liver, but I can't really get it down regularly. So I feel like it's better that I just take the capsules.
Apparently I used to love liver when I was a little baby child, which I think is so weird and gross.
Yeah.
Maybe
I think I've tried
like
it once since then, and
Yeah, your body knew.
I don't know. I haven't tried it as an adult, but I remember trying it again like as a teenager and be like, how did I like this? This is disgusting.
Yeah, I think it's so much about like how it's prepared, you know, but
for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I used to be really heavy into like supplements and diet trends and all of that, and so I feel like I've become a bit of a minimalist with supplements, and like I said, I've really focused on foods and herbs too, obviously, like the mineralizing herbs and the nervine herbs, doing a lot of herbal infusions, especially in my luteal phase. I do drink a lot of herbal tea, like a lot of nettles and raspberry leaf and milky oats, and oat straw. I have like a luteal phase blend that I drink pretty much every day. And then in my luteal phase, I get a lot more hungry, and I feel like a lot of women experience
Me too.
that, and that's totally healthy. I like to eat a lot more like sweet potatoes and root vegetables and like more dense, like nourishing foods, you know, a lot of butter.
Yum.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of bulk up during my luteal phase. Yeah.
Awesome.
I love how intentional you are.
Me too.
Like even just down to the herbal tea blend and knowing how that's going to support your body and yeah, like really making it a present practice. I adore that and strive for that. So thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
Goals. Yeah.
It's been a journey.
Is there anything else that you want to add or share? And then if not, we'll kind of start wrapping it up and asking you our final questions.
I think just to bring it back to like the energetics of the cycle for a moment, like, because there's all of the hormone things and like the physiological things, and but if you could imagine the cycle as like a medicine wheel, where like your menstrual time is like an inner like winter, and your follicular is kind of like a spring. It's kind of that building and growing and developing and like coming forth. The ovulation time is like peak summer, and the
I love
luteal.
that.
Yeah, this is how I've learned to work with my cycle.
Yeah, so
seasons. Love it.
It's just the luteal being like autumn or fall. I feel like you know, because it can just, everyone has like a different way of tending to their bodies and their rhythms, but I feel like this, like, you know, this is like the energy, the way that it moves through us. That's kind of like ubiquitous.
What I'm like thinking and feeling, hearing that right now is just like, for my first thought is like, oh, it's so annoying we have to do that like every month. But then my second thought is like, we get a chance at a fresh start every single month. Yeah. And like, how exciting. Like we can just decide to start over with our next like cycle.
That's so real. I was just thinking about that with the new year too. It's like I saw this meme actually that was like, all of you setting intentions like one time a year. It's like this ridiculous thing, but it was like, it's true that there's these like,
you get to do it every month.
Like but feeling that bigger energy of like, wow, this like big fresh start of the new year, and I'm like, well, who am I kidding? Like I go through this like over and over and over again every like 28 days.
Oh yeah,
you know.
Love that. Totally. So I feel like we touched on this quite a bit while we were talking, but one of the questions we ask everyone at the end of the podcast is like, what's one thing you do for self-care that like you can't live without?
Yeah, I'm just like such a mutable person too, that like, depending on the day.
You're really great at self-care, it
Oh,
sounds like,
it's
too.
such a work in progress. Like I try to be, but just like anyone else, I'm like,
Always.
like sometimes it's hard to take care of the self for sure. But
Of course. You're
Also,
human.
sometimes like your self-care is just taking a break from fucking self-care
yeah,
because it's like when it becomes daunting, it's like it's not really worth it or like
yeah.
benefiting
Thanks
you.
for saying
really.
that. Yeah, I mean, because I feel like there's so much pressure to just like be, I don't know, whether it's pressure we put on ourselves or how we, feel in the world, but just like always be like doing something. And I feel like that's why my brain is like, oh gosh, because I'm like, there's things that I ritually do every day that really help me. But I feel like it's really just like finding a moment to slow down and come back to myself like fully.
Yep. Yeah.
Because I am such like a, you know, tending, like I'm always tending and like tracking and, um, just giving myself a moment that's like fully just for me and like bringing all of my like sensory awareness back into my body and getting into my body with my awareness and like in a, you know, taking a few breaths. I like to like go to the water, I like to be outside, but even if I can't do that, just for me, like the self-care that I really need the most lately and probably will for a long time is just that creating a moment to drop fully into my body and breathe and like kind of like check in, yeah.
Love it.
I love that. That's so perfect and interesting too, because I'm just thinking about the beginning of this episode. I've literally never started off and like our deep breath, grounding breath thing. I've never started it off as like set into your body and like feel the things. That's the first time I've ever done that. And it felt very intuitive. And I just love that it full circled right now. I was like, someone needs to hear this right now. We just need to like feel our emotions and our feelings and notice them.
That's
and just allow
exactly
them to be there.
It's just like a permission,
So I adore
permission
that.
slip, to be like
just very
who and where we are. And like, yeah, there can just be so much. Yeah.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so beautiful and so needed. Our other question that we like to ask our guests is if you could tell little Sammy one thing, what would it be? And that could be Sammy when she's 5 or Sammy in her 20s, or, it could be yesterday.
Yep.
Any little version, smaller, younger version of yourself.
Yeah. Well, what comes up, and this is something that I need to say to myself sometimes. I just feel like what she wants to hear is, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. It can change, but I feel like that, everyone has like a place in them that they just really needed something to be affirmed really deeply. And for me, it's always like, it's super comforting no matter what's going on. But yeah, to just give myself that loving affirmation that like, I got you and I'm not leaving.
Chills.
Love her. So good.
At the very end of the podcast, we typically pull a card from like an oracle deck. Do you have one that you like, or do you want us to do the card pull?
I do have one that I like, but
would you do the honors?
Oh, sure. Okay, great. That's funny. I was just looking at.
We haven't done a guest pull in a long time.
That's awesome. So this is the Earth Warriors Oracle. I don't know if you've worked with this before.
No, but I'll have you send me pictures afterwards.
Okay. the art is just phenomenal.
This looks like my kind of deck. Just looking online. Wow.
Oh yeah, it's pretty.
Okay, I pulled the Pachamama card. She with the Andean emerald heart. So in this book, there's what it says in the reading, and then some spiritual guidance. So it says, Pachamama, the goddess of the earth, honored by the indigenous people of the Andes, holds space for many different creatures to live within her field, including the crazy, beautiful, dangerous, and divine humanity. She knows that life thrives through diversity. She is able to foster life with such genius and generosity because there is no fear preventing her from holding space for the new to emerge. Be open to the new and the different in yourself and your life. Trust, like the Earth Mother, as an act of devotion. She is watching over you as you evolve to manifest the fullness of your sacred and original life purpose. Should I read the... Okay. It says, don't hold back from what is happening. Things need to change, so let them change. It may seem chaotic or overwhelming now. However, when you realize that you don't need to figure it all out, you will relax, allowing the wisdom of what is happening at a deeper level to unfold. Trust that your inner resources are enough and will grow to meet your needs for soul expression in the world. You sometimes may feel like you are juggling too many projects with too few arms. The Divine Mother can help you if you trust her to keep an eye on things and guide the process for you. This oracle indicates that peace and harmony will eventually triumph over conflict and challenge, bringing about a new way of being.
Needed that.
Yeah, I needed that so bad.
Yeah.
Same.
Perfect.
Oh,
Yeah.
love
Awesome.
her.
So
Thank
beautiful.
you, Pachamama.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you so much, Sammy. I feel like you just have this like deep, deep well of knowledge and like so many things and like so many ways to like be a woman and like in harmony with yourself and your cycle. I hope that we can have you back on someday to like dive deeper into all of this because
So
I just
much
feel
more.
like we could talk to you for hours.
I feel that way too.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you
so grateful
much.
to be able to connect with you and just to learn more from you. I absolutely adore your presence and look forward to chatting with you more.
Yeah, if somebody had any questions or wanted to reach out to you, how do you want to be found?
Probably email is best. I do have a social media account, but I'm one of those people that like really doesn't like to be on there so much. Yeah, my email is floweringearth.birth@gmail.com.
Love that.
Love that so much.
Yeah, it's super open if anyone wants to reach out.
Beautiful.
Yay.
All right, Sammy, thank you so much.
Yes,
have a beautiful day. We love you.
Thank you both. We love you too. Thank you so much.